You are listening to the Happiest Lives podcast with Jill Lillard, episode number 91.
Welcome to the Happiest Lives podcast, where you'll learn to think better, feel better, and become the woman God says you already are. Here's your host, Jill Lillard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Happiest Lives podcast as we continue our series on reconciliation and forgiveness. You all know I just hop right into things. I know your time is precious, and so let's get on with our lesson for the day. Over the past few weeks, we've talked about the importance of forgiveness and how it lays the groundwork for reconciliation. This week, we're going to dive into an essential part of the reconciliation process, which is giving feedback. So there's the part where you may give feedback to someone, and there's the part where you will receive feedback. These are the two parts of having a conversation necessary to create reconciliation. These conversations bring clarity and they invite change. When you give feedback with humility, kindness, gentleness, and compassion, your words are more likely to be heard. I think a lot of times when we go into conversation, there can be so much hurt, so much tension that we may end up just throwing up on top of them, throwing up all of our feelings and thoughts, and it can turn into a match of attack and defend and can feel very hurtful, or things might just shut down. Or because of that, we may avoid conversations altogether. When you feel more confident about giving feedback and also learning how to receive feedback, your conversations are going to go better. And so this is stuff that you can apply to small fights or situations that didn't go as you had hoped they would, or to bigger situations where you are trying to reconcile some hurt and pain. So I think ongoing, we're always making repair attempts so that we are staying connected and we're communicating and that we're moving forward in our relationship. So these skills of giving feedback can be used ongoing in your relationships. You don't have to wait till there's been some big fallout to dig out these skills. These are things you get the opportunity to practice all the time. And then when you really need them for a bigger situation, you have a little bit more confidence in your ability to communicate, and you are also maybe avoiding things from going down the wrong road because you are giving feedback and receiving feedback. You're speaking and sharing, and you're also listening. So today, as we talk about giving feedback, just remember it's not about controlling the other person. It's not about demanding an outcome for them that they have to show up in a certain way. It's about offering them the opportunity to see something they may not realize and invite them into repentance, which is a necessary for true reconciliation. So you're inviting them to take ownership of their actions that may have had an effect that they did not intend. And you want to be open to receive that feedback as well, which we're going to talk about next week. So if you're waiting for the right time to reconcile, you're waiting for the right time to have that conversation where you're giving feedback and you're open to receiving it, that time may never come. Often we define the right time as being when we think we won't feel anxious, when we think the other person won't get upset or the conversation doesn't feel hard. But the truth is, these kinds of conversations can be difficult. Instead of waiting for perfect timing, pray that God will give you the boldness, wisdom, courage, and gentleness to know when to speak and when to be silent. As James 1:5 reminds us, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. Yes, consider practical variables like a time that works for both of you, but don't rely on ease as your guide. Sometimes when I pray for an opportunity, the Lord opens the door, but that doesn't mean I don't feel a little scared. 1 Timothy 1:7 says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Trust that God will give you boldness and the assurance that He is with you in the conversation. Invite the Holy Spirit to come along with you. Ephesians 4:15 encourages us to speak the truth in love so that we can grow through these interactions. As well, Colossians 4:6 reminds us, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. So I think having this combination of boldness and graciousness, having the love, truth, and justice and mercy and humility all interweaved together is the winning formula for a good conversation. To have productive and graceful conversations, here are 3 things that you will want to avoid. Avoid absolute statements. So saying things like, you always do this, you never do this, that can feel very exaggerated, and it can overlook any positive actions the other person may have taken. So instead, focus on specific behaviors or actions. When you did this, ... fill in the blank what specifically they did, rather than overgeneralizing the problem. Also, avoid insults, judgments, or criticism, which I think those are going to come from an attitude of superiority, that I am right and the other person is wrong. Statements like you should can come across as an attack, and they can make you sound superior. Instead, make a request. I would like, would you be willing to? And you can fill in the blank of what that request is. So you're making a request without demanding. You're letting someone know your preferences without judging them and saying they're wrong and you're right. Also, avoid name calling, passive aggressive behavior, and blame. When you blame others for how you're feeling, for example, saying, you made me feel this way, not only are you giving away your power to the other person, saying you have power over how I feel, you're also putting the other person on the defensive side of things, because it's going to feel like an attack to them. Instead, you want to own your emotions. I am feeling sad because I'm having a thought. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling angry because of what I'm thinking. I like to use the heart scan process for every problem we deal with in life. And so if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, if you've worked with me in any coaching groups, then you are familiar with the heart scan process. So the bigger heart scan process is we expose, renew, engage, and press on. And then we use a tool within that process, the self-coaching model, which is basically cognitive behavioral therapy, which is going to help you organize a problem. Because when we have a problem, when we're upset, it's really easy to go in a lot of different directions, to pull a lot of different information on the table, a lot of different feelings and assessments and thoughts. And so then when we go into that conversation, it gets very messy and it isn't helpful. It's not a constructive conversation that's going to help us get anywhere. And so the self-coaching model is going to help you clarify your thoughts and feelings before you communicate. And so you might start with a thought download, writing down, processing through what is going on. Just get it all out on paper. It's better to throw up on paper, get it all out there, rather than to throw up in your conversation where you're just talking at somebody else. And then you're going to pull out one fact, what actually happened. Write down what the other person did or said, separating it from your interpretation or feelings. And so this might be, my husband said words. My husband didn't do XYZ. You then have a thought about it. What are you thinking about their action? What are you thinking about their words? What are you thinking about that circumstance? Write it as one sentence. This is your thought. Then you want to identify the feeling that thought creates. When you're thinking that thought, how do you feel? Now, this might be hard for some of you. When someone asks you how you feel, you may just provide more sentences. This is where I think a feelings list really comes in handy, where you can look at a list of feelings. Feelings are one word. Angry, sad, anxious, disappointed, hurt. Those are all feelings. And you want to be able to identify what you're feeling when you're believing or thinking a certain thing. It will create a shift within your body. So you may have some physiological feelings, and being able to put a name to it is going to help you contain it. And then what do you do? What do you not do when you feel this way? So your feelings become the fuel for all of your actions. So look at how you show up when you're feeling hurt, when you're feeling angry, when you're believing that someone doesn't care about you or that they're dismissing your feelings. And then what result does this create in your life? When you show up that way, what are you creating in your life? Now, this result is going to reflect what it is that you're believing. So what it is that you're thinking about the circumstance, you'll end up proving it in the result that you're creating. So I want to give you an example of this. The circumstance that I'm going to put here is when I brought this matter to my husband's attention, he didn't acknowledge my feelings and he defended his actions. So he didn't ask me more questions about the situation I brought to him, and he defended his actions. Now, the circumstance, you want that to be something that everybody would agree on. And would your husband agree that you said words and then he defended himself? Is he able to see that? And if he thinks that's more of an assessment, he doesn't agree that he was defensive, we could just say the circumstance is husband said words. You then have a thought about that. The thought is he doesn't care about my thoughts or feelings. When I'm thinking he doesn't care about what I think or feel, I feel hurt. So one word, a one-word feeling. When I feel hurt, that is going to fuel action. So my actions might be that I shut down, I avoid further conversations, or I withdraw emotionally. And the result is I don't really care what he thinks or feels. I don't care about his thoughts or feelings, or I prove that he doesn't care about my thoughts or feelings. So that is my model. That is what is happening in that situation. And when you process this in advance before you have a conversation, you're going to be able to take ownership of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and the results you're creating. And this can also help you communicate without blame or defensiveness because you're going to have greater self-awareness and you're going to be able to condense it down, constrain, and focus in what exactly it is you're communicating so you're not going in 100 different directions. And so you might take out parts of this model and say to the other person, when we had a conversation the other day and you didn't ask me more questions, then you will want to say what you felt. So you're pulling this from your model. Circumstance, we're hopping to the feeling, and then we're kind of going back to the thought, which is in between the circumstance and the feeling. When we had a conversation the other day, I felt hurt because I was thinking you didn't care about my thoughts and feelings. So notice I just filled in almost like a little template that I pulled out of the model. When this happened, I had a feeling because I was thinking this. When you use this model to help you construct how you're going to say something, this is going to help you focus on your experience without assigning intent to the other person. Now, the other person may not like how you felt. They may say you shouldn't have felt hurt, but you're simply telling them how you did feel. And you're not saying that you want to feel that way. You're not saying that your thought is even correct or justified. And you could add that kind of as a preface. You could say, hey, when I was trying to talk to you the other day and you didn't ask me more questions about what I was saying, I felt hurt because I was thinking you didn't care about my feelings. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying that it's true that you didn't care about my feelings. I'm just telling you what I experienced. And this is going to help you take ownership of how you're showing up, and it's going to guide your communications. Galatians 6:4-5 says, each one should test their own actions, for each one should carry their own load. We are responsible for our own behaviors, our own actions. We're responsible for our thoughts and our feelings. When you communicate, focus on what results you want to create. Your goal shouldn't be to control the other person's response, because we can't do that. Instead, seek to provide them with an opportunity to understand your perspective, to own their actions, and to engage in meaningful dialogue. As Romans 12:18 encourages, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And so we want to use our conversations to help us live at peace with others, that we can deepen our understanding and we are open to being influenced and to giving the other person an opportunity to be influenced by us. When you deliver feedback, I think there are some things that are really important. One of those is to have a humble attitude. Humility is key. Matthew 7:3-5 reminds us to deal with our own plank before addressing another's speck. Begin with a spirit of openness and kindness. Philippians 2:3-4 encourages us to value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. This mindset invites connection rather than conflict. I've already given you the tool of the model and showed you how you can use this tool to have a conversation with someone else. And I want to give you a little bit more guidance on how to include this in your conversation. So first, I think starting with a gentle opener is going to soften the startup. So this is one of the things John Gottman talks about. When a conversation starts harshly, when it's starting with a criticism, when it's starting with a strong negative emotion, it probably isn't going to end well. So you want to soften the startup. And so to start with a gentle opener, you might say something such as, "This is hard for me to discuss, but it's important to me and I value our relationship." So you're letting the person know like, hey, it's not fun to have this conversation. And in fact, it's kind of hard. So I'm putting myself out there because I value you and I value us in our relationship. Number 2, describe the circumstance. Stick to facts you both agree on. When you told me you'd be home at 5 and you didn't go home to 6 and you didn't call me, that might be a circumstance that you both would agree on. Number 3 is express your feelings. Use an I feel statement followed by a single emotion. I felt frustrated. So the circumstance, which we had in number 2, when you came home late for dinner and didn't tell me you were going to be late, I felt frustrated. Number 4, share your thought. Explain the meaning you assigned. I felt frustrated because I was thinking that you were being inconsiderate. I was thinking that my feelings didn't matter to you. I was thinking that you were only thinking about yourself and not about me. And then invite dialogue. So you might include that, hey, I want to know where you are coming from. And I want you to know where I'm coming from because I might not be correct in my assessment. So that's when you might say something like, I don't know if it's what you intended, but that's how I experienced it. Can we talk about it? And then you may end with a request. In the future, can you let me know if you're going to be running late? The way you think about the person and the conversation matters. If you believe that they'll never understand, you might feel defeated or angry, and your tone may reflect it. But if you choose to think this person wants to connect with me, even if they don't know how, you'll feel more open and compassionate. I like to think that my husband and I are both doing our best. I like to think most people are good people who want to do good and have good conversations and have good relationships. And sometimes we're just doing the best that we know how. Your goal in giving feedback should never be to control their response. Instead, create an opportunity for understanding and taking ownership of their actions as you take ownership of your thoughts, feelings, and your actions. So in closing, feedback is an invitation to deeper connection. It's not a demand for compliance. It's a way of saying, I care about you and our relationship enough to share this. As you prepare for any conversation this week, or you prepare for a bigger step of reconciliation, a conversation that has needed to happen for a long time, I encourage you to pray for boldness and trust that God is working through you to bring clarity and healing. I pray that you could release the outcome of maybe even how the other person is showing up, that you can give that to the Lord. You may have a desire for them to be responsive and to hear you. And I encourage you to pray for that. Lord, open their ears, open their heart, help them to hear and understand where I'm coming from, that they wouldn't misunderstand my intention. Help them to grow from this conversation. And then you also pray for yourself of that your words would be gentle, that they would be seasoned with grace, and that you would also speak the truth. So you can pray for both of you in the conversation, but as you pray for the other person, you're releasing the outcome to the Lord because they have free will. They get to control how they respond. And you can pray that the Lord might influence that and their heart would be open to influence. But the only thing you can control is if your heart is open to influence in the words that you say and the things that you do. And so the outcome that you want to focus on is that maybe you're speaking the truth in love. Take time to reflect on any area where reconciliation might be needed. Use the heart scan process to prepare, trusting that God will guide you. Pray for his wisdom and grace to lead the way. Matthew 5:23-24 reminds us of the importance of reconciliation. First, go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Hard conversations aren't always easy, but the Lord equips us with the courage to face them and the grace to navigate them well. Trust that he is with you every step of the way, working through your efforts to bring healing and peace. Thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you feel encouraged and equipped to take the next step toward reconciliation. Next week, we'll conclude this series on reconciliation and forgiveness by exploring the final yet vital topic, receiving feedback. While giving feedback can be challenging, receiving it with an open heart requires a different kind of courage. We'll talk about staying grounded in your identity in Christ, listening with humility, and responding with grace, even when the feedback is difficult to hear. You won't want to miss it. Until then, keep leaning on the Lord for wisdom and strength. He is faithful to guide you. I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would love to help you take this concept and apply it. Join me in Clarity and Courage, my cost-effective coaching program for Christian women. Each month, receive the tools you need to apply the concepts and grow. We will meet on a live coaching call where you can ask me anything. Plus, you get access to the worksheet workshop where you can have conversations with other women just like you. Learn more and sign up at myhappyvault.com/Clarity and Courage.